Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today we have the fabulous Eline with us. And if you haven't already, please do like, share, and subscribe. So here we are, Eline. Do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell them a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and where you're from.
Of course. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you, your work, and I feel really honored that I get to be on this podcast.
Likewise.
So, my name is Eline. I'm hailing from Belgium,
Yeah.
and I have been active in the music industry for about, I don't know, maybe 25 years, ever since I
Wow.
was 15, 16,
Yeah.
doing a variety of things, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But my focus kind of shifted 10 years ago towards advocating for mental health, specifically for people who work in nightlife, club culture, but also the broader music industry, and really helping professionals, organizations to prioritize their mental well being so that they can have sustainable success
Yeah.
longer term. So that's a little bit more of what I'm
Really,
doing.
really important and well done. Thank you for sharing that. So, Elaine, how did you actually get into this role? And tell us a little bit more about how you started out.
So, as I said, I started out when I was 15, 16. I actually started out as a singer in a band.
Oh,
It was a rock band, and it wasn't much. It was literally like practicing in a garage
yeah.
every weekend and then playing at fairs and having maybe like 5 or 10 people in the audience. It was like this really small thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I kind of gradually, I guess, discovered club culture and electronic music because I wanted to get away from my home. I grew up in an abusive home.
Same
I
here.
experienced a lot of domestic violence
So,
and sexual abuse. So for
yeah.
me, it was an escape. I think a lot of people
Yes.
have this with music, right? And specifically, dance music and club culture really felt like a way where I could be myself. I could kind of find myself, kind of
Yeah.
find my identity, right? That's
Stood
the root of dance music.
Yeah.
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 Um, so that really kind of helped me to, explore that subculture and explore myself.
Yes.
And as I kind of grew into my own and I started, I went to university and then I started a corporate job, but I always had activities next to that, like
Yeah.
blogging or, putting up parties with friends. I actually had a label at some point with my then boyfriend. So I really did like a lot of different types of stuff.
Yes.
But in all of these endeavors, I could see behind the scenes that, artists were really struggling, were struggling with the irregular hours, with, being underpaid, being discriminated against. And that really kind of got to me. And I felt like I want to do something about that, or I want to try and at least if it's just helping one person, I want to try and get the word out there. And I guess that's kind of how I slowly got into mixing, personal development, prioritizing your wellness with
Important.
everything in the music industry that I was doing.
So important as well. And you've had such a wide-ranging view of the industry. So you've been behind the scenes, you've been a performer, and you obviously discuss mental health. So what are some of the things that you notice are coming up, especially for artists and music industry professionals that are accessing the music industry? What are the struggles that they face?
I think there's a lot of them, really. Like, where do I begin? But
Yeah.
I think mostly what I can see, and some of the things that I've personally experienced as a music industry professional, is a lack of boundaries, being afraid to say no, because you know what it's like, right? Especially if you're new to the industry, if you are from an underrepresented group,
Yeah.
it's really hard to say no because there are so many people in line behind you to say yes to that exact opportunity.
Yes.
And so it's not always necessarily the fear of missing out, but I think it's also the fear of just being irrelevant and not having your voice heard.
100%.
And so you really tend to overstep your own boundaries or let other people overstep yours. And I do feel like that can really, really negatively impact your mental health
Yeah.
and the way you think about yourself, the way you see yourself. You start to internalize all of those sometimes nasty messages that come your way. Then you
Yeah.
have social media where you start comparing yourself to others. You feel like an imposter. You start overthinking things. Like all of those things are just not really high vibe, good feelings, right? To operate
100%.
on. So
It really
yeah.
bring you down at times. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. And sometimes you internalize a lot of that and you start treating yourself the way other people treat you, which is really,
Mhm.
really sad sometimes. So what kind of things can we see or could we expect to see in the future and how we can change that, make it better for everyone? Make it more inclusive, make it more fair and equitable, I think is the word, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think we still, I mean, that sounds like not very optimistic, but I think we have a very long, long road ahead of us.
Yeah,
And I feel
yes.
like the work that we're doing right now is for generations to come. I personally don't think we will see the industry that we want to see in our lifetime. I
I know.
mean, I do think we will see things getting better, and they
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
but we're not there yet. Like, definitely not there yet. I do think it's definitely, fighting against systemic issues. I think that's the biggest one.
Yes.
The music industry is definitely a reflection also of how we operate as people in society and how we treat each other.
Yeah.
And it's really a mentality shift. People just need to, I guess, learn and be more aware and be more accepting of people and don't have assumptions, don't judge. Like those are just all really, really important values at a human level that
Yes.
I think we all need to learn and take with us wherever we go, whether we're in the music industry or outside in society. It's really just a general thing that needs to
Yeah.
shift.
It's for all of us as well. I think we've all got our own biases, whether we like it or not. Like the way we've been brought up and what we see in the world, we all see it from a different lens. So I think
Yeah.
you hold biases, and it's about challenging those, but also learning and
Mhm.
accepting difference, because I think that's the beautiful part of the music industry too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely right. And I think the beautiful thing is also that you just meet so many different people and you get to experience their perspectives, you get to learn, you get to make mistakes, when you're in conversations with people, you will be told when something is just crossing a line or isn't that nice or is judgmental and you get to learn, over and over. It's just an ongoing process, right? Like we're never done learning. And I still feel like I'm only seeing the tip of the iceberg
We all make
of
mistakes.
everything that I'm learning.
Even I make mistakes. So I think it's all about a learning process and being kind
Yeah.
to yourself as well as other people. Because I think, there's a lot, we talked about this on a panel that we did the other day where some people are
Mhm.
really open to learning more around equality, diversity, inclusion, but sometimes
Yeah,
they're afraid to offend somebody by getting it wrong. So this is a
exactly.
really important part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely feel that that's the case for me as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the times in conversations where I can go into, analysis paralysis and like, should I
Yeah.
say this? Should I say that? Am I going to offend this person? Like, and I think the thing that always gets me over that is like this person that I'm talking to is powerful. Like, oh, I don't have to decide for them
Mm.
what's, like what this conversation has to be about. Like, I just get to be me. If I make a mistake, I hope this person will be, as kind and generous to tell me. And if they don't, I will probably notice it. And then I'll just have something to think about myself and go out there and read and learn and try and find as much as I can on my own.
Do a
So,
great job of that anyway. You're great at what you do and the work you do around mental health and nighttime economy. So can we just touch a little bit more on the underrepresented groups? Now, a lot of artists and music industry professionals, they struggle with their mental health, especially from underrepresented groups. But there's not
mhm,
always the money to go around to get the
no.
right support for mental health. What would
Mm.
be one of the ways that we could fix that and make it easier for everyone?
Honestly, I for years me personally, I've liked working with, sliding scale payments
Yeah.
or offering free content, so that people at least have access to things that they can implement themselves. People like learning, people are very powerful. So if you give them the tools and make it simple and easy, they can and will take it and go with it and run with it. So I do feel like a lot of things have to be accessible and free, but also offer, as I said, sliding scale payments or have a policy in place, whether it's within your company or when you're a freelancer, where you're like, okay, every, I don't know, 5 sessions or every 10 participants, I'm going to take on like two for free, or
Oh,
like
that's
just have a
exciting.
policy for that,
Yeah, yeah,
and always keep the conversation open, like gauge, if you see that finances are a barrier for someone, then have that conversation. It's
yeah,
okay to open up that conversation and to see like where can we meet each other in the middle so that we're both feeling, helped and valued and
yes,
supported and served.
yeah,
And I just think that companies in general should do that, but also like individuals, when you're exchanging information, when you're exchanging value,
yeah,
just kind of think of, when you're running up against barriers, like what can we do to figure it out together, or at least signposts to services that that maybe will serve that person better, and then you don't have to feel like you're over giving or overstepping and feel bad about it too.
yeah. Totally agree with you. And actually, you've been in the music industry for a while now. So what kind of
Mhm.
challenges and barriers have you specifically faced and overcome to get to where you are today? Because you've had a lot of different roles.
Yeah, I did. I think for me, it's definitely been trying to find my way in a male dominated industry
Yeah, yeah,
as a woman. But then also, I've experienced women amongst each other can also be very toxic, I want to
yeah.
say. And
Mhm.
because there's not a lot of opportunities sometimes out there,
You're
they
competitive.
will push each other out of the way to grab whatever is there.
Yeah.
So I have experienced a lot of that, to be honest.
Okay.
And I always find that really sad because
Yeah.
I feel like we should lift each other up. And when a door opens, try to take as many people as you can through that door,
Yeah.
which is what I've been trying to do with Eurosonic as well. I had to pitch myself for Eurosonic for like maybe 5 years in a row, I think, before they actually said yes. And
Oh,
then
wow.
once they
Yes,
did,
because you made a
yeah,
massive impact last week.
yeah, I know. And I'm like, I'm really happy it's the second round. But, as I said, like the door opened and I was like, okay, who can I like take through that door with me? Because, it's not just for me. I'm doing it for other people
The
just to have
community.
that impact. Yeah, for the community. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Well done for you. And this is something I love. And I've always connected with you from the first time we met on Key Change. I think you're so
Yeah.
open, you're so kind, you're so considerate and caring. And we need to see more of that in the music industry because we're just human beings at the end of the day. Forget about all the
Yeah.
tax, the labels. At the end of the day, we're
Mhm.
humans and we're all here to make a difference in a positive way, aren't we?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, yeah, that's definitely what you and I connect on, because I feel the
Yeah.
same coming from you as well, being kind and understanding and considerate and non-judgmental, just accepting overall. And it's
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do as a human being, but I do think it's really the foundation of any interaction that, you have in
Yeah.
life in general.
And how does Europe look at mental health at the moment? There's been a lot of talk in the UK around mental health and support around mental health in the music industry. Do you have many initiatives in Europe at the moment that help people in the music industry with their mental health, or is it mainly, just
Hmm.
people on their own?
Well, I mean, if there are many, then I probably don't know all of them, because Europe is obviously, it's
Massive.
a huge,
Yeah.
region. So I
Yeah.
might not know all of them. So if there's anybody out there listening in Europe, like please let us know. Like
Yes.
drop a comment or whatever, reach out, let us know what you're doing. There are definitely initiatives. I know, there are things that are funded, for example, by, the European Union. There is some research popping up, which I think is super important as well. The more research we can have, the more we can quantify what needs to happen. People still need that. Unfortunately, maybe sometimes people still need to have to see it quantified in order to really believe it and want to take it on, to
Yeah.
make it tangible.
Yeah.
Um, I know that I see, especially in Belgium, in my own country, and definitely also in the Netherlands, I see more and more initiatives popping up. But I do think, and I think we had that conversation at Eurosonic, it's still too fragmented, right?
Yes, I
We
think
want
so.
to find ways to kind of bring it more together. And I think the UK is doing a better job at that at the
It's
moment. To
smaller. It
kind
might be because we're a little smaller, right? It's more
Maybe,
manageable.
yeah.
That's what it is.
Could be. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that's something that I would love to see is getting things under more of a bigger umbrella, so that also the smaller players, the individuals, the smaller organizations, the smaller nonprofits can also have their voice heard and, make their mark,
Yeah.
and not kind of disappear into the noise because they are too small or unheard.
Fortunate, isn't it? And what's your
Yeah.
thoughts at the moment around equality, diversity, inclusion, especially over where you are at the moment in Belgium, over in Europe as well? Like, what's going on?
I mean, again, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but I still feel like people continue to underestimate it.
Yes.
It being, the importance of diversity, inclusion, accessibility, equality. I think there's still not enough awareness around it. I think more awareness building needs to be done. And I'm not just seeing it in the music industry, I'm seeing it, in general. Like, for example, my fiance was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder 2.5 years ago. And it's still incredibly hard for him to be able to function at his place of work, and there are things that can be done, but I think in the perception of people, there's still the perception gap. It's still not enough. Like, if they don't believe it's an issue, if they don't believe it's important to include other people that are different than them, then it's just not going to happen. And I feel definitely here in Belgium, it's pretty slow. It's like pretty slow. I still have conversations with people who are like, when it comes to autism, for example, like, oh, but it's not that bad. Everybody is a little autistic, that cliche.
Oh, right.
Or when it comes to women in music, like, oh, but it's getting better, isn't it? And I'm like, well, is it?
That too. So it's not just me, is it? It's sometimes you look at it, tick box exercise, or is it really meaningful actions? And I think there's some of us that are doing that meaningful work that are trying to create positive, real change. And I think there's certain people that do it just to tick those boxes and just to make sure they're filling the quotas, right?
Tokenism, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, for sure. And that's also the thing, right? Like, when you do like my fiance, for example, he's also a DJ and a producer, so he's also active in music, but I do see him struggle a lot mentally with just the fact that he is different, but also he they want to treat him as everybody else, but he's not.
Right.
And he's constantly trying to balance, like, I want to be quote unquote normal,
What
but
is
I am different.
what is
And
you know?
yeah, exactly what is normal. But it's like, for him, it's just he constantly gets all of these messages of this is what normal is, that he just gets really confused. And that really impacts, his mental health as well. And that not only goes for autism, it's just an example, but it goes for many things. I think when you feel misunderstood and when there isn't that openness to embrace differences, at some point, we said it earlier, we are going to internalize it and doubt ourselves. And yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done.
I know, but we're doing it. We are making, progress in small steps, but we are
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
It's really important that you touched on the word spectrum, because
Mhm.
that's another way of saying that yes, there are people that identify as a certain, that might have a certain diagnosis, but everyone under that diagnosis is different, and not one
Mhm.
fits all kind of thing either. So
Yeah,
really
exactly.
it should be very bespoke and around the person rather than just an approach around an illness or a diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely also, I think, a long way from that as well. But I do feel like there's more conversations going on around, for example, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, especially also in the music industry. I'm just, yeah, I am seeing definitely changes when I'm thinking about, what it was like when I started out 10 years ago as opposed to now. When I started out 10 years ago, people would tell me, like, is there money in that? And I'm like, well, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for
It's the
the
wrong place
social
to be.
impact and yeah. So it's like, yeah, I don't get that anymore. Now people are more like, oh yeah, 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 that's the thing. So, it's definitely better, I guess. But
Nice to hear that it's getting better. That's great.
Mhm.
What would you like to see improve in the next couple of years, especially around equality, diversity, inclusion? What could we do better?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, isn't there? I really feel like having more topics on conferences, panels, workshops, away from the business heavy topics and panels, I think would be really nice because I do feel like conferences really act as filters, right? So the people that go there for a reason because they know, like, trust said conference organizer. And so I feel like conferences have a big responsibility to curate more content towards, social change.
And for the
So I do want to see, yeah, I do want to see more of that for sure, I
and I
think.
think that resonates with the audience because the music industry is also a reflection of society in a whole, right? So we want to be
Mhm.
inclusive and we want to reflect different unique stories along the
Yeah,
way, which I think
yeah, yeah, exactly. And just put more people up there that more people can actually identify with. Like, don't always put, the same people up there, and then you will attract more diverse audiences and different perspectives and different voices. So I do think there are definitely conferences out there that do a great job at this already, and who embrace this and who don't do it just because it's a fad, because in the beginning that was kind of the case, I think, especially with mental health, like, oh, let's do something around mental health. And then the year after, it was completely gone from their program. But yeah, I think that's a good one to have more.
remembering what are the important ones and embracing those and keeping them, not swapping them all around, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, for
Get you on
sure.
that one, actually. And obviously, you're part of Europe. So, European Union is massive. You've got a lot of
Mhm.
different cultures under the European umbrella. So, do you think that has an impact on the amount of equity, inclusion, and diversity that we can achieve because of the different ages and different cultures?
It's interesting because at Eurosonic, I actually had a meeting with the founder of Cool Club in Italy, and we had a conversation around this, like around because I used to live in Italy. I lived in Italy for 3 years, so I know it pretty well.
Yeah,
And we kind of agreed that in Italy, it's still very much something that's not talked about, mental health in general. I feel like in Belgium it's become more and more, but in Italy, they're not really seeing it that much. So of course, culture is going to play a role in that.
yeah,
Society, the way you deal with things, the way you've culturally seen things over the years, over the centuries, maybe.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I do think culture definitely plays a role in that. But also that's what makes it interesting, right? And that's what makes it so exciting to explore how every different culture
yeah.
is going to be, handling that.
Yeah.
So that's
And trying
kind
to
of
get
what I
everyone
like
on the
about it.
same page and trying to get everyone on the same page is also the challenge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's also why I like traveling around to different conferences in Europe and just really trying to be in it a little bit more and try to hear the conversations locally a little bit more. I think
Yes.
is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You learn from that all the time as well, right?
For sure. And there are so many unexplored areas for me still where I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just find it really exciting. I just love taking it all in and
Right.
trying to see where I can help. Yeah.
I get that. And I think I'm the same because we've kind of had the same kind of upbringing and experiences. And I think that gives you that empathy and that understanding, but also that willing to support and help other people. Because I think that's what I'm also about, is trying to give other people a voice and support them too, right? I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, for the longest time for me, it definitely came from that pure survival instinct. Especially, growing up the way we have, it really makes you just want to survive. Like, I remember growing up with this idea of, either I'm going to be way up here or way down there. And it's always been like, no, I'm choosing way up here,
Yeah, good on you.
because sometimes I literally had to survive. I've had instances in my youth where I was threatened, with all kinds of things and, going to get killed or whatever. Like, I was a child, so of course I believed it. If you say anything, I'm going to kill you. If you say anything to this person, I'm going to do this. And I do feel like I have this inherent, like, I want to survive. And whenever I see someone struggling or, I don't know, like, my feelings go somewhere and I see this person struggling, I just really want to sort of tell them like it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You can do this. Like, don't let this beat you down. And you have that power and focus on what you can control. You can't control everything. I know that, but like
Yeah.
try to find that one like inkling, like that one small intervention that can have the biggest impact on your life in general and hold on to that. And like, you deserve to be here. You are enough, like all of these things that I had to learn myself. I'm like, yeah,
There's a lot of self-doubt, isn't there? I
oh,
think,
yeah.
and I think that's another thing is when you start internalizing it, you start doubting yourself. And then you start thinking that you're not good enough or you shouldn't be there, and I think that's
Sure.
totally wrong. So I love the way you think with the positive mindset,
Mhm.
So let's go back to you again and let's talk about some of the work that you specifically do in the music industry and how people could access that.
So specifically, I started out more so with one-to-one coaching individuals. I did a formal training as a holistic coach in personal and transpersonal coaching. So that was many, many moons ago already.
Yeah.
I'm also back in school studying psychology at university here in Belgium, which is probably going to take me 10 years to finish, but whatever. I have time.
Well
So
done,
it's all
well
good.
done.
But I've also gradually over the years moved towards group training, peer support sessions, workshops, but everything is bespoke because we just mentioned it, right? Like you can't just have a one size fits all formula for nothing, right? I just
Ridiculous.
like to have anything
Yeah.
bespoke. Yeah. And so mainly I work around, 4 pillars of wellness: your emotional wellness, emotional mental wellness, social wellness, financial, and creative wellness. Because I found that those are kind of mostly in the music industry, the things that, kind of work together. I
Yeah.
also firmly believe that what's lacking or thriving in one area tends to overflow into another. So if you start working with one thing, it tends to overflow into the other areas as well. And then really everything I do, whether it's a one-to-one coaching session, a peer support session, a panel discussion, whatever it looks like, a corporate training, I always do it from the same foundation. And the foundation is really just, I call it the ABC of a happy, healthy nightlife or life in general.
I need some
And
of that.
yeah. And so really what this does, it's giving you steps where you can self-coach yourself through any situation, whatever it looks like. And so the A stands for awareness and acceptance, where you really look at, okay, what is it that I want to change? And do I have control over it or not? Can I accept where I'm at right now? And then the next step is just having that bigger picture vision, like where do I actually want to go?
Yeah.
And then once you have that, you can reverse engineer into taking consistent action steps towards building that vision. And I
Wow.
kind of like structured things like that because when you get overwhelmed, you're like, you don't know, your head is going in every direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having that foundation, that structure, it's just very helpful, I found. And this is really the foundation of anything I do, whether it's a self-guided online course, a training, on any topic within one of those pillars. I just find, yeah, it's very helpful.
That's awesome. And do you know what else I really love about you? You've had that real lived experience, not just with the mental health stuff, but also in the music industry. So you can combine those together. You can
Mhm.
understand how the industry operates, but also understand how that impacts people in general, right?
Yeah, and that's mostly also the feedback that I get from most of the people that I do work with. I think over the years I've trained over 600 individuals, and that's usually the feedback that I do get is, some people have tried going to see a therapist or, some other mental health professional. And they always say, well, it's actually nice to have someone who understands and is in the industry because it really adds that extra layer of feeling deeply understood and accepted, right, with my issues. Because yeah, that's also a thing. You need to feel heard. If people don't really think it's a problem, whether you're a really skilled, trained professional or not, if you don't really understand the sector, it can be hard
Yeah.
to really support someone. Yeah.
And obviously being a woman in mental health and all the other stuff you've done, have you ever experienced discrimination and stigma, along the way?
Yeah, I think definitely as a woman, not being taken seriously
Yeah,
is something that I experience still a lot.
yeah.
And also, there's always something about my appearance. People don't tend to take me seriously because they feel like I'm too young,
Really?
or I come across as being too young, whilst I'm going to be 41 this year. So I'm like, I have lived, you know?
What lived experience? How could they say that?
It's really
But you
crazy.
do
I do
look young. Of course you look young, but why should your age have something to do with what you bring to the table? I'm
right?
shocked actually, because
Yeah, yeah.
it's also a bit of an insult at the same time, isn't it? When you're thinking actually,
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, because I don't think that men get that very often.
right.
And also, as you just said, like it's not because you're young that you don't have anything to bring to the table. This is also, by the way, why oftentimes young people tend to come to me because they feel like, people don't take me seriously because either, I'm still a student or I'm an aspiring music industry professional and people don't take me seriously. And they already start with a huge amount of self-doubt and their career hasn't even started yet,
Yeah.
which, by the way, is also why I want to start teaching this stuff at schools and whatever places of education where they cover music education or music business or whatever it is, because I do feel like it needs to become part of a curriculum as
100%.
well.
It's crucial, I
Yeah.
think, of the talent pipeline. I think a lot of us in the music industry have suffered a lot along the way, through our
Mhm.
own lives. And I think it's extremely important to have this kind of built into the talent pipeline to support people along the way too. It's crucial.
Yeah, and also I feel like, the longer I am into my journey in the music industry, the more I'm just looking for ways to share my knowledge.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I know it's probably the same for you as well as a researcher. But also just, yeah, share my knowledge and just making sure like that's my legacy, right? Like I want to leave something for future
Wow.
generations. And then at the same time, also trying to find ways to have an impact on policies and like not going to say I'm going to go into politics, but I am getting more involved with people who are working for the European Union. And I do feel like that may be my next step as I become older and wiser. Maybe I can have more of an impact through that way as well.
Oh, that's awesome. We're running out of time. We've got 5 minutes left now then. So how can people connect with you, find out more about your work, or just
Yeah.
reach out? They might have some questions or some resources, or they even
Yeah.
might have some therapy. How could they do that?
So the best way for me is to share my newsletter. So people can just sign up for my newsletter. You can sign up through my website, theunicornmothership.com. You can just find it at the bottom of the homepage. I really do share things in my newsletter that I generally don't really share anywhere else. I also talk about a lot of personal stuff because I feel sometimes it's relevant.
Yeah.
And then just my personal Instagram page at _ I am Eline. People tend to like to follow along on my stories and see my cats and my horse and my
I know.
blog posts and my
Big fan myself. I am.
yeah.
I will leave all the links in the description below so people can connect with you on those as well.
Yeah, yeah. So really just, yeah, and send me an email. Like people like to email me, but once you're on my newsletter, you can always reach out to me personally at captain@theunicornmothership.com. I do tend to email a lot with people on my list, and just former clients know they can always email me or send me a DM on Instagram. Like I'm always open to have that
Super
conversation.
relatable, super kind, super friendly, super relatable. Come and hit Len up and get some help because she can help you. She always helps everyone. She's lovely. So thank you so much for coming along today, sharing your story, the amazing work that you're doing. Please keep it up. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much again for having me. I really
Real
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you for coming. Take care.